Hello, everybody. We are back at the World Autism Summit with Caroline Gaddy, who is a speech and language pathologist, AAC specialist, disability advocate, and a neurodiversity educator based in Virginia. She has presented on AAC and neurodiversity affirming practices at state and national conferences. She has experience in medical, private practice, and school settings with adult and pediatric populations. Caroline is passionate about disability justice and inclusion and firmly believes that communication is a fundamental human right. So thank you so much for joining us on the World Autism Summit, where we want to change the world.
And yay!
Yay!
One of my favorite professors would say, "We'll change the world by breakfast tomorrow."
That's right.
Let's do it.
Even yesterday,
Here we go. Hop.
Yeah, let's get on this thing. So my first question I ask everybody is, what brought you to the World Autism Summit?
Well, my most honest answer would be because my job told me to. But honestly, they reached out and said, "Hey, we would really like for you to present at this." And I looked it up and I was really excited. I'm excited for international conversation. I think that's something that has been lacking a lot, that in our conversations around neurodiversity and neurodiversity affirming services, I think that we can lose sight of intersectionality. And one part of intersectionality is absolutely your culture, your place internationally, your locale, where you live, your experiences. And so I'm really excited to have a dialogue, a dynamic conversation from perspectives around the world to further inclusion and acceptance, and to really help get more understanding and knowledge out there. So I'm delighted that it exists, and I'm delighted to be here.
So happy to have you here. And what you do, helping people communicate and hold hands, and really so important. And how do you feel like your area of expertise can help expand this mission globally? Because that's what we're about, is the global initiative.
I think it kind of actually is a bit of the last line of my bio, that communication is a fundamental human right. And, for a variety of reasons, autistic people may be non-speaking and may need alternative or augmentative access to communication. I am a define myself as a multimodal communicator. So I often use oral speech, I use my hand slot, I use gestures and sound effects, song, as you were treated to earlier. And I also, there are times that I do become really overwhelmed and non-speaking, and those times I do use forms of AAC. I may use just basic texting or text to speech, and I also have an AAC page set. But that is just my experience, and there are many people who do not have access to mouth words at all. And then what do they do? How do they get to then communicate and interact with the world in a way that is universally understandable? So we may be communicating to the best of our ability, but if it's not coming out in a way that everybody else understands, then there is going to be misinterpretation, and I may not get what I need or may not get what I want, and then there's going to be a breakdown. And I think it's really one of the greatest honors and privileges in life is to support a person in getting communication access so that they can express themselves more fully and more in a way that is more universally understood, as opposed to maybe I'm showing something with my face. Like, we're always communicating, and maybe I'm showing something, but somebody else doesn't know that that face means stop. And so I can do this in this other way. If my mouth words will not work, I can do this in another way so that I can still communicate that and maintain my autonomy and maintain um, my right to consent and to control my environment, which I don't say in any kind of negative, and control is like a negative thing, but the way that all of us want to as human beings be able to access the things around us.
Yeah.
So I think that communication is kind of a really key communication access, it's access in and of itself, but communication is a big part of access to a lot of other things.
Oh, for sure. And I think without communication, a lot of times, or without effective communication, we are unable to express what we want.
Yeah.
Behavior challenges happen. I know we've moved a long way, from when I was younger to where we are today, and have a long way to go. But people, they didn't communicate, or people didn't expect, that there was a lot of people with cognitive abilities, back in the day. And now I think people are really amazed and excited with people's ability to understand and comprehend, that are able to get their words out now through a lot of the devices and a lot of the techniques that people like you and organizations that you represent are bringing forth. So thank you.
Yeah, it's work that I am happy and proud to do. But I think that you touched on something so important in that part of our job as AT specialists, as SLPs, as any professionals in the field who may be working with autistic individuals, and I am an autistic individual, so I am autistic and work with autistic individuals, but that presuming competence is kind of the bottom line. It's, because exactly as you said, we tie so much, uh, we associate so much about intelligence. We presume so much about intelligence, about understanding based on how you speak, what you can communicate. And it's really important to um, normalize all forms of communication and to presume that people have a desire to communicate, that people are human beings. Like, it's a pretty important thing to do.
So now I want to ask you, why do you do what you do? What's your compelling reason?
um I went into speech language pathology. Actually, my uh, speech language pathology is my second career. I was a theater practitioner and a teacher, so I performed and directed and taught theater. And when I transitioned, I really thought that I was going to do more voice, which I still love. I love voice. But when I was in school, I got to take an AAC class, and I was really invested in disability justice and in advocacy. And I liked that you could combine those things in working with AAC. And I found that once I graduated and was out in the field, um, that a lot of people are hesitant about AAC. They don't feel competent to support it or to introduce people to it. And so I would kind of end up default being that person. and and that was fine by me. But when I had the opportunity to take this position with Tobii Dynavox, it meant that I could support other people in my field at helping to get that access for more people and helping them to feel more competent and confident. And I mean, I said it before, it's an honor. Like it really is, it's a pleasure to get to do that. And it's getting to see a person get that device and they have those moments of, I can say what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah.
It's a it's a really special thing. And I really like, it's a privilege. Like it's a privilege to get to be there for that. It is a privilege to get to support that. And I'm really lucky that I get to do that and to advocate for that within my profession for my community, which the autistic community, which is really it's really cool.
That's so amazing. That is so amazing. I know I share that too. It's like it means so much, when you're for every milestone, it means so much more when it's that struggle, that extra, bit that you just it's very, yeah, it just means a very lot. How can we set up systems of success in partner relationships globally in the area that you're in?
I really think that the answer, particularly systemically, to kind of any and all relationship development is inclusion and access. You know, if we don't, if we're not part of the conversation, um, then we're not part of the conversation. That the conversation is happening about us. Um, and there has been, in disability history, a lot of things done to or for disabled folks without their input, without their consent, without their participation. And I think that the way we move forward in creating better systems and systems of equity is when we are focused on inclusion and accessibility. Because if they can't, you know, if they're not included at the table, they're not part of the conversation. And if they can't get to the table, they can't possibly be part of the conversation. So it's really about making room for those things.
Absolutely. They need to be right there, front and center at the table. Very important. It's for them, by them, and about, it's about them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, for those less familiar with what Tobii Dynavox does, can you tell us more about Tobii Dynavox?
Yeah, so people may not be able to use oral speech for any number of reasons. This could be something that, they were born like this, something that could happen as a result of an incident or an accident, like in the case of like a TBI or a stroke, that could change their communication ability. And so when people are not able to access oral speech, then we want still, because communication is a fundamental human right, we want them to still be able to have a way to communicate and share themselves with the world. And so AAC is alternative and augmentative communication is one way to do that, which we would call also more specifically a speech generating device. And so we have a variety of devices that people then can use to speak so that the device can speak. The device becomes their mouth becomes their speaking tool, and that they can access through touch, using a switch, eye gaze, head mouse, and then it's really about communication access, but also just about accessibility of your environment in general. Because, like, for example, for our eye gaze devices, there are also there's also software built in that will allow people to control the computer with their eyes, or we have TD Browse, which is an internet browser that is controlled by eye gaze. So these are things that are communicated. I mean, we do communicate on the internet. This is fact. but that it's also about, again, coming back to that environmental control, about autonomy, about being able to participate in this the same things that everybody else gets to participate in. It's access.
That's great. Yeah, people do need to communicate, and it's really important that they get their words out and participate, have fun, and relate. How do the solutions Tobii Dynavox provides support autism or to autistic communication?
That's a subject I'm actually very passionate about. I think that there are a number of things. So I'm very I am very committed to sharing education around the understanding that we can never access our communication, or certainly our best communication, while dysregulated. Communication is a really, like, this is a frontal lobe activity. This is going to be all up here. And if I'm dysregulated, and I'm going to be back in my amygdala trauma brain fight or flight response. If I'm autistic, my likelihood of becoming dysregulated is a lot higher, because the experience of the world is not really made for me. And things tend to be very bright and noisy, and lights make sound. I don't know why, but they do. And so there's a lot of things that can really kind of distract and disrupt and make it harder, make it a barrier for us to be able to access our communication. And so having tools that allow us to communicate, but also tools built into the communication software that help facilitate our regulation. And so we have, like, supports tools built in that can really help with regulation, with with transitioning, with, if you're familiar, I love the I'm gonna get her last name, I've lost it. Erin, I'm a doodlebug, but the tendril theory, that we put out our tendrils into a thing and our brains are so into it, and then a sudden change is like whack, we're getting our tendrils are getting cut off. And so we need to be able to prepare to move to the next thing, so we have these supports tools built in to help with the transitions, to help with preparation, to help with, if you're familiar with autistic polling and getting that reassurance that we need for regulation. There are so many nice tools built in that can support that, so that when we are dysregulated, there are things to help us be able to get back to being able to access our communication in kind of those difficult moments. Also, the ability to customize our software is really fantastic, so that you can do things like make an emergency page for dysregulated communication. I can't have this much overwhelm at that moment. I am too overstimulated. I need to narrow the field. And there's different ways to do that within different page sets, but it's a really nice benefit. And again, you can change colors so that they are, do you like to have your colors more vibrant? Do you need all your colors to be muted because the colors are too loud? Does the color pink make your head vibrate? Like, there are things like that you can do, and you can change to make it to be reflective of that person and that person's needs. And I think that's good for everybody, period. But I think that particularly for those of us who may have a harder time with sensory regulation, with emotional regulation, having things within your communication that help to facilitate communication even when you are dysregulated is a incredibly important tool to have.
That sounds great. It sounds like something I can use right now.
I use it all the time. I use it all the
time. Yes, lots of sensory stuff going on. I'm just curious, what percentage nowadays is it that people have that are non-speaking, that have autism, that are autistic?
Oh.
Do you know if there's a different trend right now, or like I'm asked that all the time? Is it 40%
I'm
still?
so bad at math and numbers.
Me too.
I'm a bad autistic. I'm not good at math. And so I'm
That's
so
okay.
bad at
That's off the wall.
remembering numbers. But the number that I can tell you that I do always remember, because it is the number that makes me the saddest, is that of the people who need communication access, only about 2% are actually getting it.
Ooh.
That's a pretty intense thing to consider.
That is very
And
intense, yeah.
as speech language pathologists, we play an integral role in that, and that we stand at a position to be facilitators or not.
Right.
And I think that, and part of my, my mission in life, but also conveniently also Toby Dynavox's mission is that we want to provide the resources for people, provide the education for people, so that those professionals do feel confident to do it, so
Right.
that they can be facilitators, so that 2% becomes a thing of the past.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I know there's a couple of movies that are coming out that are talking about, this particular situation too. We have one at the conference, I think it's on Thursday night, that Elaine Hall is bringing out. So it's
awesome.
Typing. So it's very, very, very good.
It is.
Yeah, we've heard more conversations in the community about just Gestalt language development. Can you tell me about what it is and what it isn't and why it matters?
Well, so actually, when we were talking before the presentation and I started singing a little bit of what I was doing, that's actually kind of a bit of a glimpse into Gestalt language development. So Gestalt is a fancy word that got termed, it's like a German for kind of whole, like the whole being greater than the part. I am not, somebody's going to see this who is German is going to go, no, that is not exactly what it means. That's fair. I'm kind of loosely going off of what I know. I am not that good. Although I will say, one time I did perform a version of Hamlet in German, and I had to learn a whole monologue for a character who does not actually appear in the final version of Hamlet, who is called Knight. And I still remember a lot of that monologue. And for a brief period, I was working at a stable, and there was a horse who was injured in the barn, who was German, and I would say the monologue to him. And I feel that it brought him comfort to hear it, feel familiar with it. So Gestalt language processing is this idea of, instead of language development as we are used to thinking about it, that somebody's going to get a word and they're going to get another word and they're going to get another word and another word, another, and then we're going to start to figure out how we put two words together. Oh, and then we're going to put these other two words together and these other two. Oh, now we can get three words, right? And it's going to build in that direction. In Gestalt language processing, it works in a kind of the opposite way, but then takes off on the similar path. There's more of a precursor. So what happens, instead of looking at these pieces and putting them together, we see the whole. So then you might get us using scripts, using echolalia, and using these things with purpose and intent, and having a script for a certain scenario. And oftentimes those scripts are they're about feeling, like they're about the emotion of that moment. So I'm trying to think of a good example, but so my I will, so like my daughter went through this period where she would say, "Come on, boys," and she was 5. I don't know where that one came from exactly, but she used that like totally functionally to mean like, come and play with me, come here, let's be silly, chase me, come interact with me. Like it was that way of, and it came, I think it might have been from Tangled. I'm not 100% sure, but the idea was that here was this person saying this, and then they got the engagement that they wanted. So now she understood that and could use it to seek that engagement and say, hey, come and let's do this. So she had that whole. And so that would be when we're having that, what they would call a gestalt, but that's a script, that's echolalia. And then what happens is that we will start to then see that whole as chunks. We'll start to see the pieces. So if I had a script of, let's go outside. Go outside. And I said that all the time. Anytime I wanted to go anywhere, like, well, let's go outside. Because I had picked that up from class where that's what we said every time we were going outside. And I liked the transition of going and it made me feel excited. So I said that every time. But then eventually I'm going to start to be able to break that down to understand that let's go is a chunk and outside is a chunk. And so that then I can start to take those and understand they're two separate pieces, and then understand that I could mix them with other things. That let's go could go with let's go to the park, let's go fast, let's go home, right? We could use these kinds of things. And outside could get put with other things too. Nice outside. And then as we start to understand that, then we start to break down to those single words. And then from there, a lot is similar. It's not exactly the same, but there's a lot that is still very similar about. Then we get those single words and then we start combining them. And it's just that there's a bit of a different way. And it is something that seems to most commonly occur in the autistic population based on the research that we have. And it's not solely autistic people, but it is primarily autistic people. And there's a lot about, the reason I referenced singing is because a lot about Gestalt language processing does have to do with rhythmic intonation and understanding the prosody of things, liking the sound and the rhythm of how that works. And that can be kind of part of the script itself, which can sometimes then turn into song.
That sounds really, like my son would do this EXIT out the door, EXIT out the
exactly.
door, over and over and over again.
That's it. That's exactly it. What a great script. There you go.
EXIT,
going out the door.
EXIT, and he'd go out and around and around and round and round, in one door, out, just over and over again. I put it in my book. And then we joked about that so much. Oh yeah. You're taking me right back. There was another one about pizza too. I can't, anyway.
Well, we all need a good script about pizza, really.
Anyway, yes, then it'll make me hungry for pizza, so
right.
That. So how can AAC be used for Gestalt language processors? I think we answered that, didn't we?
Yeah, it's really that, just as, there are going to be people who are Gestalt language processors who will be non-speaking. And so it's really just about adjusting how we are thinking about their AAC access to make sure we're accommodating for the way that they learn and understand language. So things like being able to record and use different voices so that you get that rhythm and
Oh,
that
yeah.
intonation, being able to do those kinds of things. Being able to, I will sometimes use our supports tools to help show how a phrase can be broken down into chunks to help start to visually see how it can be broken down and hear it. So you're getting both kinds of input. It's a matter of awareness and support. A thing that I am very kind of, that is really important to me for people to understand, and something that I say, I have a webinar about Gestalt language processing that is on the Toby Dynavox Learning Hub. And I say this in there, so if you happen to see it, this is redundant, but that whether we developed language in the traditional sense that we all understand it, which can be referred to as analytic language processing, or we develop language as Gestalt language processors, either way, we're gonna get language, we're gonna get communication, but our mode of language development has to be supported. If you're spending your time trying to teach the fish how to ride the bicycle, you could be really great. The fish ain't gonna ride the bicycle, right? So it's like, if we just set up somebody who's a Gestalt language processor and just handed traditional AAC, they might get it, maybe, or it might just be kind of another foreign thing because it's not set up in a way that supports the way that we understand and interpret and then develop our communication.
It really sticks with you too for a long period of time, Like I now remember the pizza one, and it was nothing but Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
And we had
Yes.
I had 6 kids, right? And they were all within a period of 9 years. So we were driving around in the van and we'd go different places all together. So all of us, all 7,
Yes.
right? We were all doing that in the car at the same time. And to this day, it's like we do that. Well, my husband now, and he'll say it.
I love it. Yeah, and see, and that's what a fantastic example of affirming a communication and joining in it all together and help it. Like, what a great celebration of that kind of community. My kids had so many, and I remember them periodically, but briefly, he didn't hold on to this one for long, but it was really funny because briefly my son did one from Arby's, and he would go, "Arby's, we have the meats." He was like 4, and he would do this one like, "We have the meats," of this little like cherub child with curly like blonde hair and dimples. Like, it was very cute.
I love that kind of stuff, really do.
Me too. Me too.
And they had so many commercials back in the day that, so many sing-songy commercials that were so cute.
Well, there's actually a apparently oft unremembered film, but I often reference it, is called Batteries Not Included. And it was a Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin film. And there's a character in that film who is an adult. They don't ever say this, but he's a Gestalt language processor. Like, he communicates entirely in commercial scripts, but he uses it completely functionally. Like, it's a really good example of
that would be
how
really good to
how it works. There's also cute little robots in it, but anyway.
That is so great. That's delightful. And they're so much fun anyway.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing is that if, like, for example, if somebody were a Gestalt language processor and we gave them AAC and it was more traditional and just single word, then they don't have that delight, that emotional connection, that tie-in, that I'm doing this with my mom in the car. Yay, we're going to Pizza Hut. Like that, then that gets lost. And so how can we help facilitate that and still give them communication access? That's really the key thing, so that we can delight in those things, because they are delightful. I mean, when me and my autistic friends are together, we part of our enjoyment of each other is scripting together. And, somebody will script and then somebody else scripts back and then we're going at it. It's a delightful time. We have lots of fun.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. That's great. What would you want communication partners or neurodivergent communicators to know about their communication style?
I think actually that what we just said was a bit of it, that one, we do have some communication differences, and now research is starting to come out that actually shows that the way that although all children may use echolalia as part of their language development, no matter their neurotype, that this is a particularly common thing that occurs within the autistic population, and that this was something that at one point was thought to be, non-functional, that was thought that needed to be extinguished, when in fact it is part of a way that we learn and communicate and connect and relate. I mean, and exactly what you're saying is such a beautiful example. Because I can feel it. I can feel it in my heart. Like the kid going, here we're going to Pizza Hut. The whole family joined it in, and everybody's in on it in the car. Like, woo, Pizza Hut. Like, what a great. I mean, that's this really wonderful kind of moment of shared communication and connection. And I think that what we are starting to see in research that is coming out is that there is kind of identifiable characteristics for neurodivergent communication, and specifically for autistic communication. Direct eye contact, not my favorite thing, but direct words, direct speaking, yes, big fan. Less subtext, please. So there are things that aren't bad or wrong. They're different.
Yeah.
And what happens is that what we are seeing in this research is that autistic to autistic communication works out. That non-autistic, allistic to allistic communication, good, works out. But when we have autistic to allistic, then we can get communication breakdowns. And I think it's very important in relationships, in working environments, in human existence, to know that there are these different communication styles, and that from a professional perspective, that different does not mean broken.
Right.
Does not mean it's inherently in need of repair. And that that if we give all parties tools, we can help them understand each other more. Which kind of comes back to, your question about systemic, creating better partnerships, that if we're understanding how we're communicating and recognizing, oh, your way of communicating may be different, and your way, and how can we meet in the middle? How can we have, kind of competing access needs and find that way to share with each other? And I think that historically it has been, and if we come from more of the medical model of disability, the idea is kind of that an autistic person is that because our communication is different, because our social communication is different, that means it is disordered, that it is errored, and that is not the case. It is in fact just unique and different, and that when everybody has that understanding, and myself included as an autistic person, neurotypicals, you do things very different, and it's very confusing. It can be very confusing. We're inferring something, but I think as an autistic person growing up in a neurotypical world, it is much more conditioned into me to adapt myself to neurotypical speaking styles. Whereas I think that everybody benefits when we teach people as a whole about all kinds of communication. We normalize and accept all kinds of communication, autistic styles of communication, but also using AAC, using sign language, using facial expression, using like all forms of communication, the more that we destigmatize
Yes.
those things,
Mhm.
I think the better it is kind of for everybody, and the better it is for particularly autistic people in need of communication access.
Yeah.
Because instead of kind of having this extra hoop of, oh, this is, this kind of communication is flawed, then instead we can come from a point of view of, this is a unique communication style, and how can we facilitate this with this kind of communication support, and let us uplift you to what you do. Again, not trying to, rather than trying to teach the fish to ride the bicycle, celebrate how great the fish swims.
That's beautiful. That's great. That's wonderful. I love that. Thank you. Do you have any other things that you want to say to our audience? That's beautiful.
So many things. But first, I guess I would say to the audience, thanks. Thanks for coming and joining. I say all the time when I give presentations, to sincerely, you know, thank you for being part of the conversation. Thank you for listening. I I do this work because I am autistic. This is my community. I do it because I'm a parent of autistic children, and this is their community. I do it for children whose stories are not mine to tell, and things that I have experienced as a teacher and as an SLP, and I don't want to keep seeing those kind of stories repeated. But as I often, say, I've got skin in the game. Like, I'm invested in this. So when people participate in these conversations, it makes my heart happy, because we're having it, because we're moving towards more inclusion. We're moving towards a better world, towards better support, towards more acceptance. We're moving in the right direction, and that's really awesome and exciting. I would say that for anybody watching now who is interested in AAC, or has, is starting kind of your journey and is like, gosh, what do I do? How do I do this? The Toby Dynavox Learning Hub, which is, I'm going to know it. It is learn.tobydynavox.com. That is a really excellent resource for lots of videos and handouts and guides to, I mean, an overwhelming amount of things, a plethora, which is a great word, is it not? A plethora of
Yeah.
things. It's there's so many things of and to facilitate so many different learning styles with, videos. We have handouts that are, more like a bulleted list. There's just a lot of different kinds of support about how to use the software, about how to use devices, about how to model and teach AAC use, how to do AAC assessment, how to go through the funding process for those of us in the United States who are working with privatized insurance, how that process works, which is different, internationally. But there is still explanation for that. Different, it's just a different thing. But it has its own, from people that I've spoken to, that it has its own challenges. But there's also a thing that I would personally recommend, again, if you're really just getting started. And the question that I get so often is, what do I do? They have this device. What do I do? And I think that we as human beings, I say with no judgment at all, with complete compassion and understanding, because I have done it too, that we can make things very complicated of like, but how? But here's this device, and this is a technology thing, and I can't possibly do this. And I have such a high workload and I am too busy. And those things are all true. Those are all valid, real things. But that including the device is not as hard as I think we think it is when it is totally new to us. And so there's a course that we have on the Learning Hub that I'm a big fan of for anybody starting out. It's called The Magic of Modeling, that just talks about modeling without expectation and how to show and show the use of the device and do it in a way that is natural and engaging and fun, and in the car going talking about Pizza Hut on the way. That's exactly what it should be. That course is available on the Learning Hub. That is pre-recorded, but if anybody really likes to do live sessions, you can also go to our Tobii Dynavox webpage, and at the top there's a tab that's called Learning and Support. And you can go select the live events calendar. And on September 13th, there's going to be a live webinar of the magic of modeling. And I just think it's such a great starting off point for anybody feeling overwhelmed, which, as somebody who is a parent, who has been a teacher, who is an SLP, and a human being, we're all overwhelmed. I get it. I hear you. And let's see if we can find ways to be less overwhelmed.
That's beautiful. And spelling of Tobii Dynavox is 2 I's. I think
Yes.
it's important to spell it out, because
It is.
first time I typed, it was like, oh, it's got 2 I's. 2 I's.
That's a good one. We should do that. It's 2 I's, just like
2 I's. Domain names can be tricky at the best
It is.
times.
I love it. That's such a great little I love it. I love it. That's a good one.
Anyway, well, you have been delightful, my dear.
Thank you.
Yes, we all need to go out and get some pizza now.
I'm never going to argue with pizza. We can all go get pizza anytime.
Okay, so thank you so much for being a part of the World Autism Summit. And I think everybody should check out learn.tobiidynavox.com, and that is learn is learn.tobiidynavox.com.
That's it.
Check it out. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Let's see what we got.